as was illustrated earlier with respect to the discussion on the grapevine, we have to be careful not to be fickle with respect to either issues studied or even comments made. But at the same time, we have to be flexible because circumstances change. We know more, political dynamic changes, all sorts of things. And so this is a question perhaps for one of our future meetings. And that is, and again, we don't want to make too much of concerns expressed by legislators, but we have to take them into account. If we should decide that perhaps under our mandate to build a system from San Francisco to Southern California, that we want to, in building the system, reprioritize. What are our constraints? So, for example, let's say we decide not to prioritize the peninsula, but go to Southern California, for example, the Inland Empire to San Diego. What are our constraints? Perhaps council can respond under Prop 1A. I understand some of that's in phase 2. Can we move it up to phase 1? And what are our practical constraints? So if you can answer that question today, great. If not, I think that's something for future consideration.
I would love to hear the answer to that question.
I think Ms. Schenk also maybe, did you want to? Yeah.
Let's hear
Ms. Schenk actually first posed that question. And to the extent that there's an issue among the board members, it was originally raised by Ms. Schenk.
Thank you for teeing it up and being so diplomatic about it. For the purposes of the new members and the reasonably new members, the reason that we have a phase 1 and phase 2 besides funding is that early on the Sacramento to San Francisco and the San Diego to Los Angeles corridors were not seen as priority. I can speak for the Los An corridor. That was not seen as a priority because when we, a very different group of us, had a meeting in San Diego about 5 years ago, there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm for the project because they were looking at mag-lev. Over the 5-year period, a lot has changed, and that entire corridor has transformed, and there is a significant amount of support in the corridor amongst the 4 counties through which high-speed rail would traverse. The speakers who brought up the issue of ridership and modeling, you don't need a model in the Los An corridor. The ridership is there and has been there since the early 80s. It is the second busiest rail corridor in the United States in terms of ridership, and on snow days, probably the busiest when the Northeast corridor is shut down. So the ridership is there. Every modeling that has been looked at shows that it can be a very profitable corridor. Building on what Commissioner Umberg said, the issues along the peninsula are not new. I mean, there's some things that have just been brought up in recent days, but they really build on what I have seen as a long history of dissension, opposition, lawsuits, very, very real and good concerns on the one end to NIMBYism on the other end. I think that Prop 1A, the way I read it anyway, allows some flexibility for redirecting funds, and if a certain segment of phase 1 fails or cannot be implemented in a timely manner. And so I agree with Commissioner Umberg. I would like to know what are the findings that have to be made to under Prop 1A or any other applicable laws and the funding of ARA, et cetera, to say that a segment just is not going to move ahead, and to what are the steps then that the phase 2 corridors have to take to be ready to step in to take advantage of the funding should we make the findings that need to be made. And let me just conclude by saying that listening to Senator Simidian and my former congressional colleague and dear friend, Congresswoman Eshoo, etc. What I'm hearing, to be blunt, is a bailout of Caltrain. And I, for one, don't want to see our precious high-speed rail funds that were so hard to come by. And I'm speaking as a person who was there at the very beginning in 1981 when it was truly just a fantasy and a pipe dream. And now we're at the point where we have money. I don't want to use those monies to bail out any regional transportation system, including the surfliner in my own community, and especially Caltrain and others. So with that, I'm very interested in hearing what steps we can take.
I'm Deputy Attorney General Amy Nguyen. I'm the council's or the board's counsel at the Attorney General's office. I can't answer your question of all the findings that are necessary and what steps do you have to take. That's something that would require study and coordination and consultation, and not prepared to give a response to that today. However, I would just second your statement that my understanding of Prop 1A about the prioritization of the segments is also that there is flexibility in the statute. That is, of course, a question that we'd have to look at and study, but and I want to take care that we listen to Chairman Pringle's concerns that we not send off any signals or show our fickleness, but yes, there is flexibility in the law.
Well, Mr. Chairman, could we ask staff to ask council to give us that information? It is purely the information, if it is possible, what are the steps, etc. I think all of us would at least like to be educated about that.
Yes, I think that would be good direction, good knowledge to have, and under every circumstance, just to know what those options would be. Thank you, Ms. Shane.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Hartnett.
that's consistent with what I had in mind in terms of us evaluating the proposal. The kind of findings that have to be looked at and determining what findings and what you're comparing it against, I think that's the same kind of effort that I think has to be made to understand at all whether what is being proposed is practical and legal. Because certainly, I think it's beyond just listening to legislators. It is not a bailout of Caltrain, from my perspective. It is making, how will this system most effectively work in a way that it can be funded, and to get to the Transbay Terminal, and have the ridership that be able to have the capacity to carry the ridership that is predicted, and for it to be a sustainable system. And so, I think it's important that we have an open mind as to how to do that. I'm not saying we fundamentally change things, but I think we have to have an open mind. And I just don't think, unless we have the kind of analysis that was just discussed, that we can say for sure.
Yeah, and I believe you have full knowledge of what this board has done in the past, but so forgive me if I say something you already know. But I think this board has been very open to looking at alternative ways to deliver the mandate that is the requirement of this board. And in fact, in Southern California, when many of these same issues were evident in terms of adding 2 additional grade-separated tracks, this board voted to move forward with a shared track option and to work with the FRA, find out how it can work in a legal, safe, proper way to also meet the requirements of CEQA, Prop 1A, and 3034. If some option is presented that says all of this work that has been done up till now in studying multiple options has an impact that is not sustainable, but here are other options we wish to study that still meet the parameters of Prop 1A, CEQA, and 3034, I don't believe this board in any way would turn its back on studying and looking at other options. But there is going to be a point in which we say you got to stop adding new options and study what you have and come to a conclusion, and then you decide how to build out that approved plan. That doesn't mean the first day you build it to its maximum capacity. And I think that's what this issue is today. We have it approved under CEQA, and then we decide and determine how best to implement that. And it doesn't mean you build out everything to that full capacity. But my challenge is, I'll be blunt, are we just wasting our time because the senator in this area and the congresswoman and others in the area are just going to say, unless you do it this way, it doesn't work. And I may be too blunt about this, but I did think I read in the letter that it said 2 tracks in the right of way, all within the existing right of way, and no aerial structures. I believe that's what I read in the letter. So if that's not what they meant, that's good. I mean, and any subsequent letter that's sent that says we didn't mean what we said, that's great.